Christmas had always been magical at my parents' house, but this year felt extra special. My 8-month-old daughter Emma would experience her first real Christmas dinner with the whole family. My husband Marcus, a military commander, had just returned from a 3-week deployment, and seeing his face light up when he held our baby girl again reminded me why I fell in love with this man. The Victorian house smelled like turkey and pine, with our massive Christmas tree twinkling in the corner. Everyone was excited to meet Emma properly, especially my sister Jessica, though something seemed different about her reaction when she first saw our daughter. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from and hit that like button if you have ever had a memorable family gathering during the holidays. Subscribe to hear the rest of this story about the Christmas evening that changed everything for my family forever. That December morning in our cozy suburban home, I woke up feeling genuinely happy for the first time in months. Being 28 and working from home as a freelance graphic designer while caring for Emma had been challenging, but Marcus always made sure I felt supported. He had arrived home at 6 a.m. from the military base, still in his fatigues, and immediately went to Emma's crib to wake her with gentle kisses on her forehead. She had his bright blue eyes and the sweetest giggle that could melt anyone's heart. My family lived just 20 minutes away, in the house where Jessica, David, and I grew up. Dad was a retired high school history teacher, and Mom had taught elementary school for 30 years before retiring. They had been incredible grandparents, always offering to babysit and spoiling Emma with handmade blankets and wooden toys. My younger brother David, now 25, and finishing his master's degree in engineering, absolutely adored his niece and had become the fun uncle who could make her laugh until she got hiccups. Jessica, however, had been acting strange since Emma's birth. My older sister was 30 years old, successful in marketing for a tech company downtown, and had always been the achiever in our family. She lived alone in a sleek apartment and seemed to have everything figured out. But lately, her comments about motherhood and babies had become increasingly sharp. We arrived at the family home around 11 a.m., and the familiar sight of the white Victorian with its wraparound porch covered in twinkling lights made my heart swell. Marcus carried Emma in her car seat while I managed the diaper bag and presents. The front door opened before we could even knock, and Mom appeared with flour-dusted hands and the biggest smile. "There's my beautiful granddaughter," she cooed, reaching for Emma immediately. The baby gurgled happily, recognizing her grandmother's voice. Dad emerged from the kitchen wearing his silly Christmas apron that read, "Ho, ho, ho," and wrapped Marcus in one of his famous bear hugs. "Good to have you home, son," Dad said warmly. Marcus had earned a special place in their hearts from day one, and deployment always made these reunions even sweeter. David bounded down the stairs still in his pajamas, despite the late morning hour. "Emma, did you miss your favorite uncle?" He immediately started making ridiculous faces that sent Emma into fits of giggles. This had become their special routine during every visit. Jessica appeared from the living room dressed impeccably in a cream-colored sweater and dark jeans, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She looked beautiful as always, but her smile seemed forced when she approached us. "Hey there," she said, giving me a quick hug before glancing at Emma with what I could only describe as a clinical expression. "How was the drive over?" "Easy enough. Emma slept most of the way," I replied, watching Jessica's face carefully. Something felt off, but I could not put my finger on exactly what. "Must be nice when they cooperate," Jessica said with a laugh that did not quite reach her eyes. When Mom asked if she wanted to hold Emma, Jessica quickly shook her head. "Oh, I better not. You know how fragile babies are. I might do something wrong." Marcus and I exchanged a quick look. Jessica had been around babies before and never expressed this kind of hesitation. Throughout our childhood, she had always been confident and capable with younger kids. The morning progressed with the usual Christmas chaos. Mom bustled around the kitchen, refusing help, while simultaneously complaining about having too much to do. Dad attempted to carve the turkey with David, providing unhelpful commentary. Marcus naturally fell into helping wherever needed his military efficiency, making quick work of setting up the high chair and organizing Emma's supplies. During lunch, Jessica's comments became more frequent and pointed. When Emma dropped her sippy cup for the third time and I calmly picked it up, Jessica muttered, "Must be exhausting following her around all day." When Emma started fussing because she was getting sleepy, Jessica added, "I guess your whole life revolves around her schedule now." I tried to brush off these remarks, attributing them to Jessica, maybe having a bad day at work or feeling stressed about the holidays. But Marcus, with his keen observational skills honed by years of military training, had started paying closer attention to my sister's behavior. I caught him watching Jessica whenever she spoke, his expression growing more serious with each subtle dig. Mom and Dad seemed determined to keep the mood festive, constantly commenting on how beautiful Emma was and how much she had grown. They asked Jessica about her job and her dating life, but she deflected these questions by steering the conversation back to criticism of modern parenting styles. "Parents these days are so overprotective," she said, while cutting her slice of ham with more force than necessary. "In our generation, kids were just tougher. They did not need constant attention and entertainment." I felt my cheeks warm, but kept my voice calm. Every generation learns new things about child development. We are just trying to do what feels right for Emma. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, showing his support without escalating the tension. But Jessica was not finished. "I just think all this hovering and baby talk cannot be good for her independence," she continued, taking a sip of wine. How is she ever going to learn to self-soothe if you pick her up every time she makes a sound?" The awkward silence that followed was broken by David changing the subject to football, but the damage was done. I could feel the defensive walls going up around my heart, and Emma seemed to sense the tension because she started getting cranky, despite having just eaten. After lunch, the family gathered in the living room to watch football, while Emma practiced her newly acquired crawling skills on the carpet. She was getting faster every day and delighted in exploring every corner she could reach. Marcus sat on the floor beside her, ready to redirect her if she headed toward anything dangerous, while I curled up on the couch, feeling grateful for these peaceful moments. Jessica had moved to the armchair with her second glass of wine, and I noticed her watching Emma with an expression I could not quite read. When our daughter crawled over to investigate the coffee table legs, Jessica suddenly snapped, "Can she not just sit still for 5 minutes? All that movement is making me dizzy." "She is just exploring," I said gently. "Crawling is good for her development." "Everything is about development these days," Jessica replied with an eye roll. "Whatever happened to just letting kids be kids?" As the afternoon wore on and we prepared for dinner, Jessica surprised me by offering to help with Emma. I felt a wave of relief, thinking maybe my sister was finally warming up to her niece and wanting to bond with her. How wrong I was. The first sign of trouble came when Jessica tried to feed Emma her dinner. She spooned the mashed sweet potatoes too quickly, causing Emma to cough and sputter. Instead of slowing down or adjusting her technique, Jessica became visibly frustrated. "She is so picky," Jessica complained loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Why does she have to make eating so difficult?" Marcus immediately stepped in, his voice, calm but firm. "Here, let me take over. She's not being difficult, just careful with new textures." He gently took the spoon and began feeding Emma at a much slower pace, talking to her softly between bites. I watched Jessica's face turn red as she stepped back clearly, embarrassed by being corrected, but also angry about it. The family dinner conversation continued around us, but I could feel the undercurrent of tension building like a storm on the horizon. During the main course, relatives started asking Jessica about her personal life again. Aunt Carol inquired about her dating situation, and Uncle Bob wanted to know about her career advancement. Instead of answering directly, Jessica used these questions as opportunities to launch into criticisms about how parenting had changed. "I just do not understand why everything has to be so complicated now," she said, cutting her turkey with sharp, aggressive movements. "Parents today act like their children are made of glass. They analyze every little thing and turn normal childhood behavior into some kind of crisis." When David tried to lighten the mood by sharing a funny story about his college friends, Jessica interrupted him. "At least you get to finish your thoughts without being interrupted by crying every 5 minutes." Marcus set down his fork and looked directly at Jessica, his military training evident in his controlled posture and steady voice. Jessica Emma is an infant. Crying is how she communicates. There is nothing abnormal or problematic about that. Instead of backing down, Jessica actually laughed, but it was a bitter sound that made me wince. Oh, right, I forgot. The big, strong military commander is also a baby expert now. The tension at the table became almost unbearable. Mom and Dad exchanged worried glances, clearly unsure how to handle the situation. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and I felt my protective instincts flaring as Emma, blissfully unaware in her high chair, continued eating her dinner. Emma had been such a good baby all day, adapting to the new environment and all the attention from family members. But as evening approached and she got tired from the long day of stimulation, she started showing signs of needing her bedtime routine. When she began fussing in her high chair, I could see Jessica's jaw clench with barely contained irritation. "Must be nice to just stay home all day playing with toys," Jessica muttered under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Nothing," Jessica replied with a fake smile. "Just wondering what it must be like to have such a simple life." Marcus's protective instincts were clearly activated now. I could see the change in his posture, the way his shoulders squared, and his attention focused completely on Jessica. Years of commanding troops had taught him to recognize threats and respond accordingly, and my sister was definitely registering as a threat to his family's peace. When Emma reached across her tray toward Jessica's sparkly necklace, curious about the shiny object, Jessica jerked away so roughly that Emma startled and let out a small whimper of confusion. "Do not touch that," Jessica said sharply, to an 8-month-old baby who obviously could not understand her words, but could definitely sense her hostility. That whimper turned into proper crying as Emma reached for me, wanting comfort from her mama. As I stood to pick her up, Jessica rolled her eyes dramatically and said, "Great here, come the waterworks." I felt something snap inside me, but before I could respond, Marcus spoke in a voice so low and controlled that everyone at the table immediately paid attention. "Jessica, that is enough." Emma's fussiness escalated as her overtired state combined with the stress she was picking up from the adults around her. I rocked her gently against my chest, whispering soothing words and trying to calm both of us down. The combination of travel, new environment, and family tension had finally caught up with my normally easygoing baby. Marcus stood up from his chair, his full height and military bearing commanding attention from everyone in the room. "She has been perfect all day. She is tired, which is completely normal for a baby who has been awake since 6 this morning." But Jessica was beyond reasoning, now emboldened by the wine and whatever resentment she had been harboring for months. She pushed back from the table so abruptly that her chair scraped against the hardwood floor with a harsh sound that made Emma cry harder. "This is exactly what I am talking about," Jessica said, her voice rising. "You baby her constantly. She controls this entire family, and everyone just goes along with it." I could not believe what I was hearing. "She is 8 months old, Jessica. She is not manipulating anyone." "Oh, please," Jessica shot back. "You drop everything the second she makes a sound. You have turned into one of those mothers who thinks the world revolves around their precious little princess." David finally found his voice and tried to intervene. "Jess, maybe you should take a break. You have been drinking and—" "Do not you dare!" Jessica whirled on our younger brother. "Do not you dare take their side against me. I am the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking." Mom and Dad sat frozen in their chairs, clearly shocked by the turn this family dinner had taken. They had never seen Jessica act this way before, and I could see the confusion and hurt in their eyes. Marcus stepped closer to where I was standing with Emma, his protective instincts in full force. "Lower your voice." "You are scaring her." That comment sent Jessica into a complete fury. "I am scaring her. I am not the one who created this spoiled little brat who cannot handle 5 minutes without being the center of attention." The words hit me like a physical blow. Emma was not spoiled or bratty. She was a baby, behaving exactly like a baby should behave. But before I could defend my daughter, Jessica was reaching toward us with determined hands. "Give her to me," Jessica demanded. "I will show you how to handle this properly." Every maternal instinct I had screamed danger, but Jessica was my sister. And part of me hoped that maybe holding Emma would help her remember why families were supposed to love and protect each other. "Jessica, she just needs to go to sleep," I said hesitantly. "Maybe we should just head home." "Nonsense," Jessica replied, practically snatching Emma from my arms before I could stop her. "She needs to learn that crying does not get her what she wants." Emma immediately reached back toward me, her little arms stretching desperately for her mama. The crying intensified as she found herself in unfamiliar arms that held her stiffly and without warmth. Marcus stepped forward immediately. "Jessica, give her back to Selena. Now!" But Jessica ignored him completely, holding Emma at arm's length and bouncing her roughly in a way that clearly made the situation worse. "Stop crying," she said firmly to my infant daughter. "Just stop it right now." The entire room held its breath as we watched this disaster unfold. Emma's cries became desperate screams as she realized she was trapped with someone who felt dangerous to her baby instincts. "Stop crying!" Jessica repeated, her voice getting louder and her bouncing more aggressive. Then it happened. The sharp crack of palm meeting soft baby cheek echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. Emma's scream cut off abruptly in shock before resuming at a pitch that sent ice through my veins. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Emma seemed stunned into a moment of quiet before her pain and fear exploded into the most heartbreaking sounds I had ever heard. "Jessica!" I screamed, lunging forward to grab my daughter from my sister's arms. "What did you just do?" But Jessica was already on the defensive, her face flushed with anger and something that might have been panic. "It was just a little tap. You are completely overreacting. She needed to learn that crying does not solve everything." My hands were shaking as I examined Emma's face, seeing the red mark blooming across her perfect little cheek. She was hysterical now, clinging to me like a lifeline, while her whole body trembled with sobs. The chaos erupted around us. Mom gasped and covered her mouth with both hands. Dad sat in stunned silence, his face pale with shock. David had returned from the kitchen just in time to witness the slap, and his expression showed complete disbelief. But Marcus? My Marcus transformed into someone I had never seen before. Every inch of his 6'2" frame radiated controlled fury as he stepped into the space between Jessica and our family. His voice, when he finally spoke, was so calm and so deadly that it sent chills down my spine. "Everyone, sit down now." The command was issued in the tone of a man accustomed to being obeyed without question, and even Jessica seemed to realize she had crossed a line from which there was no return. The red mark on Emma's cheek stood out like a brand against her pale skin, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me as I held my traumatized daughter. This was not discipline or tough love. This was an adult taking out her frustrations on a helpless baby, and I would never forgive it. Marcus stood perfectly still, but I could see the coiled tension in every muscle of his body. Years of military training had taught him control, but it had also taught him how to be truly dangerous when the situation called for it. When he finally spoke again, his voice cut through Emma's cries like a blade. "Look at me, Jessica." Something in his tone made my sister finally understand the gravity of what she had done. Her defiant expression wavered as she met Marcus's eyes, and I watched her face go pale as she encountered the full force of his protective rage. "You just struck my infant daughter in my presence," Marcus said, each word carefully enunciated. "In front of her mother, her grandparents, and her uncle. You hit a baby because she was crying." Jessica started to sputter some kind of justification, but Marcus continued as if she had not spoken. "She is 8 months old. She cannot control her emotions, communicate her needs clearly, or understand complex instructions. What is your excuse?" The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Emma was beginning to calm in my arms, but she kept looking fearfully toward Jessica, her little body still shaking with residual sobs. "I was just trying to," Jessica began. "No," Marcus cut her off with military precision. "You were taking out your anger and resentment on an innocent child. There is no justification for that. None." Jessica looked around the room desperately, seeking support from our parents or David, but everyone avoided her gaze. Even her staunchest defenders could not rationalize what we had all just witnessed. "You cannot kick me out," Jessica said, her voice growing shrill with desperation. "This is not even your house." Marcus never broke eye contact, never raised his voice, never moved from his position of controlled authority. "Watch me." Those two words carried more weight than any shouted threat could have. This was a man who had commanded soldiers in life-and-death situations, who had faced down actual enemies and made decisions that affected hundreds of lives. One bitter, jealous woman posed no challenge to his resolve when it came to protecting his family. "You have 30 seconds to collect your things and leave," Marcus continued. "If you ever come near my wife or daughter again, if you ever contact them, if I even hear that you have spoken their names in public, I will make your life very difficult in ways you cannot imagine." Jessica grabbed her purse with shaking hands, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to track. Anger, fear, embarrassment, and something that might have been regret, all flickered across her features. "You are all going to regret this," she said, making one final attempt at bravado. "I was just trying to help. That baby is going to grow up spoiled and weak, and it will be your fault." Marcus stepped aside to clear her path to the door, but his eyes never left her face. "Goodbye, Jessica." The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house, followed by the angry roar of Jessica's car engine as she peeled out of the driveway. Only then did Marcus allow some of the tension to leave his shoulders as he turned back to Emma and me. "Are you both okay?" he asked, his voice immediately gentle as he reached out to stroke Emma's hair. I nodded, though I was still shaking from adrenaline and shock. "I think so. The mark is already fading." But we all knew this was about more than a physical mark on Emma's cheek. Jessica had revealed something ugly and jealous inside herself, and there was no taking it back. Mom finally found her voice, tears streaming down her face. "Selena, sweetheart, I am so sorry. I had no idea she was feeling this way. I never would have. It is not your fault," I assured her, though my own voice was still unsteady. "None of us saw this coming." Dad cleared his throat, looking older than his 68 years. "Marcus, son, I want you to know that you did exactly the right thing. What Jessica did was unforgivable, and she is not welcome in this house until she gets help and makes genuine amends." David, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, finally spoke up. "I have been worried about her for months. She has been making comments about how easy your life is, how everything just falls into place for you. I thought it was just normal sibling rivalry, but this..." He shook his head, unable to finish the sentence. Emma had finally stopped crying, exhausted from the emotional trauma and her long day. She rested her head against my shoulder occasionally, letting out little hiccuping sobs that broke my heart. Marcus sat down beside us on the couch and wrapped his arms around both of us, creating a protective cocoon of safety and love. "She is never going to hurt you again," he whispered to Emma, though she was already drifting off to sleep. "I promise." In the weeks that followed, Jessica made several attempts to contact various family members, but her messages all followed the same pattern. She blamed everyone except herself, insisted we were overreacting, and demanded apologies for embarrassing her. She never once acknowledged that hitting a baby was wrong or expressed any remorse for traumatizing Emma. Our parents, who had always tried to see the best in all their children, were forced to accept that Jessica had shown her true character that night. They changed their phone numbers and made it clear that she was not welcome until she underwent therapy and made genuine amends. David told us later that some of Jessica's friends had reached out to him, sharing stories about her increasingly bitter comments regarding my marriage and motherhood. Apparently, she had been telling people for months that I had everything handed to me, and that Marcus was wasted on someone who just stayed home playing house. The jealousy and resentment had been building for longer than any of us realized, and Emma's innocent presence had simply provided the final trigger for an explosion that was probably inevitable. But our little family grew stronger in the aftermath. Marcus's protective response had shown me a side of him I had never seen before, and my respect and love for him deepened immeasurably. Emma, resilient as babies often are, showed no lasting effects from the incident and continued to develop into a happy, confident child. The most important lesson I learned that Christmas was that protecting your family sometimes means cutting off toxic people, even when they share your blood. Real family is not just about genetics. Real family is about people who show up when you need them, who celebrate your happiness instead of resenting it, and who would never dream of hurting the most vulnerable members of your circle. Marcus taught me that true strength is not about avoiding conflict, but about knowing exactly when and how to stand up for what matters most. His calm, controlled response was far more effective than screaming or emotional outbursts could ever have been. That Christmas dinner changed everything for us, but not in the way Jessica had intended. Instead of dividing our family, her actions brought us closer together and showed us all what real love and protection look like. Some people cannot handle other people's happiness. Some people will always find fault with choices that bring others joy. Some people will even hurt children to make their point about how the world should work. But the beautiful thing about building your own family is that you get to choose who belongs in your inner circle. You get to decide who deserves access to your peace, your joy, and your precious babies. Jessica made her choice that night, and we made ours. She chose jealousy, resentment, and ultimately violence against an innocent child. We chose love, protection, and the kind of boundaries that keep families safe and strong. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your child is not tolerance of bad behavior, but the knowledge that they deserve to be protected, valued, and respected. That Christmas taught me that family is not just about blood relationships. It is about who shows up when it matters most, who defends you when you cannot defend yourself, and who creates the kind of safe space where love can flourish without fear. Have you ever had to cut ties with a family member to protect your children? Do you think we overreacted? Or would you have done the same thing in our situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below because I would love to hear about your experiences with difficult family dynamics. Please like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about family challenges, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose your children's safety over keeping the peace with toxic relatives. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your family deserves to feel safe and loved, especially during the holidays.